Okay, we made we made a little I'm glad you guys are having fun. This is MOBI. Welcome to MOBI. Thanks for not actually shooting me. All right. So I hope this empowers you guys to go like do this kind of. This is fun, right? So it's not just about making like a little app for your class or like find all the permutations in this binary thing, right? You can actually like go outside and make some really cool stuff with all this knowledge you're learning. So that's always really fun.
I'm posting a bunch of links, and so don't worry, it's going to be on our Facebook Live. That's cool. But also, if you go to our website, idaptthat.mobi, because mobi.com is taken, you can join a little Slack. You just hit this little button right here, and you go to Slack, and then you're on that little page. And we're going to post like a bunch of links there, so I definitely recommend it. Also, if you have like ideas for future workshops, questions, all that kind of stuff, that's where we do it as well. It's like, we don't do any like tutoring or TA type stuff, but we'll help you out if you post in there. One more minute and I'll start it. Just for this. That's all. Oh no, okay, so you don't post on Slack iMobi, you post on Twitter. And the cloud has it transfer and then post to Slack. We'll talk about that. Alright, cool stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and start it. Sweet. Alright. So, like I said, all this stuff, here's a bunch of code. If you don't feel like typing, that's cool. You can just click on this little guy right here, and this will get you all the code. So there's three things we're going to talk about today, and both of them are going to be Lambda functions, and then this whole thing that I'm doing right now, where like you post a tweet, it pops up on Twitter. That's this code as well, and we'll talk about how to like go and install all that. So don't worry. Next thing is this little guy right here. So we talked with. So we did a challenge recently and like won this like MLH AWS thing. So we got in contact with some AWS people, and we were supposed to have individual codes for everyone, but apparently like it was too short notice and they couldn't generate them all in time. So instead, they're just telling everybody to apply to the AWS Educate thing. But we are trying to do like an actual event with them, so we can get like stickers and T-shirts and all that kind of cool stuff. They have a Dallas office too. But all right, cool, for the real stuff. Make sure to join that. Where's my PowerPoint? All right. So this is us. Today we're going to be creating a Twitter bot using AWS Lambda. Twitter bots are cool. They win a lot of hackathons, just like VR projects and Facebook chat bots. It's a big trend right now. So why not go for a trend? I'm sure a lot of you guys are in senior design or software engineering or have done hackathons. So this is a cool place to start. We're going to be doing this using this cool thing called AWS. So first thing, like I mentioned, join our Slack, idaptthat.mobi, and there's a little tab right there. This number should be a lot higher by the time this presentation's over, or workshop. But yeah, just click that button, put in your email. We won't sell your information. It's just like, it's like a group me, kind of. How's it going? So we'll be covering today Amazon, AWS. We're gonna do a lot of Twitter stuff, as you saw earlier, and that's what it's gonna look like. It's gonna be lit. All right. Oh, I pressed back. My bad. There we go. All right. So AWS, this whole like cloud thing, this whole Twitter thing. I mentioned hackathons. I mentioned projects. The whole idea of this is like, I've had a lot of friends talk to me about, oh, I'm working on this really cool senior design project, but I have no idea how to connect this app to Yelp or this app to my database. And so that's what this whole cloud is. It's what Heroku, AWS, and we'll have another workshop. We've had workshops in the past about Heroku and like deploying to like what's called Elastic Beanstalk. But we're gonna focus on more of just like an introduction to AWS. How do you get a bunch of free credit being a student, and the cool stuff you can do. Cool stuff we've done in the past, we made this app called Scribble Escape. So if you guys have heard of a game called Scribble Knots, it's basically like you have this little game, right? You're this little guy, and you have to cross this obstacle course, but you have to like make stuff for him. So if there's a river, you like type in boat, and a boat appears, you can hop on the boat, just stuff like that, right? So we made this VR game with like a Vive, and so basically, as you're walking around, you can actually like hand draw like a key or type in the word like hammer, and they could use it in the game. And it's powered through AWS. So we actually have this little socket server set up. We're talking to each other. I know it sounds really complicated, but I'll prove it. It's very easy. We made this other cool thing called Sticker Shop. None of us knew how to 3D print. We're computer science students. So we took a cardboard box, a bunch of duct tape, and some motors, And we basically okay, this is really cool. So you go on our Shopify, or yeah, it's using Stripe. So you order some stickers, and it'll open up what stickers. It looks really crappy, but it was fun to make. It was our first hardware project. More AWS stuff. And then last semester we got back in that retro trend of playing Minecraft again. Some of us, we had a little server, and so we made an Alexa skill where you could be like, hey Alexa, how many people are on the Minecraft server? And it would tell you. And we used that with AWS Lambda. We're gonna be covering stuff like that today. So cool stuff. Like I mentioned, what we're making, we have this little thing. All you have to do is make any tweet on Twitter and post hashtag HiMobi, and it'll pop up in that general chat. It's not censored, so yeah, we know who you are except for MOBI bot, the guy who just made that. I don't know who you are, but cool stuff. Another thing is, so like I mentioned, there's a lot of stuff to cover. I'm kind of watching the clock. Most of the code's already made, so that's gonna be super, super easy. The kind of prerequisites are, I'm doing this in JavaScript. You can also do it in Python. It's really easy. There's tons of libraries. We're not going to recreate the wheel. We're not going to do any kind of HTTP requests. It's all going to be libraries. Super, super simple, something to get you started. Another thing is I talk really fast. So Jessica has a Nerf gun, and she's going to shoot me if I start talking too fast. You guys can't keep up.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Also, feel free to interrupt me. If you're like, hey, what is this step? I got you. Again, we're live streaming everything, so feel free. Another thing we're making, so, okay, I don't know if you guys, so there's this mod on this game. I don't know, I saw it on Reddit. Basically replaces a bunch of things with Jaden Smith tweets. So it's how can mirrors be real if your eyes aren't real? So we're gonna make something like that where the whole goal is essentially on AWS Lambda, you can get a random tweet from Jaden Smith. And you could essentially go mod your game or post it on Slack or something like that. I'm gonna leave it open to you. You can make an Alexa skill to say, give me a random tweet by Jaden Smith, and it'll do it. So we're gonna hit Slack, we're gonna hit AWS, we're gonna hit Twitter. It's gonna be fun. All right, so let's break it down. So this whole AWS thing, this is a very, very quick little recap of basically what we're doing. But essentially, AWS is some way of transfer. How can I get my data on this phone into some database, or my data from this computer to a friend's computer? How can I make this video game multiplayer? And so this is cool. I'm sure you guys have heard of these cool things called servers. Essentially, the cloud is, I used to have a sticker. Do I still? No, I don't. It's the cloud is just a bunch of computers or something like that. But essentially, that's what it is. So we're going to have a little client, which is us. He's going to do a little thing. We need to talk to that server, essentially. And we do that by this thing called JSON. So I'll give you an example. Like I mentioned, very, 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 very quick introduction right now. But basically, it's some language to communicate. Some of us speak, English, Spanish, whatever. JSON is almost kind of like that language. So it's just a way to talk to each other, right? So we ask it a question in this language, and it gives us a response in this language. And while it's doing all that stuff, it's got some cool stuff over here. In this particular example, this guy's sending an email and hitting some other endpoint. But for the most part, it's just a way of talking to AWS is our example that we'll use. So this AWS Lambda thing that I keep mentioning. So there's tons and tons of AWS things. There's I don't know, there's literally so many services. The main one we're going to talk about today is this whole thing called Lambda. And if you guys have heard of this whole serverless architecture, if you've ever heard that before, it's essentially, you're kind of thinking okay, imagine your code base, right? You have a bunch of functions. One function is say hello. One function is I don't know, generate a lottery ticket number. Another function is send an email or something like that, right? So instead of thinking about your application as a whole, think about it as these individual functions. And that's essentially what Lambda is. So, whenever you ask Alexa, what's the weather today, what it essentially does is it fires up this little function and it says, okay, maybe hit my little weather API, tell me what it is, and report it back. It's super simple. The whole idea is instead of running your own server like Node.js or Java with Tomcat, whatever ASP, it's this quick little function that fires up and then it shuts itself down. I think you can actually make 1 million of those without being charged for it, so that's pretty cool too. But how do we call it, right? So there's got to be some kind of way to actually communicate with this thing. Way number one is by making an API endpoint out of it, and that's this little weird symbol in the middle. So like I mentioned, we had that JSON that talks to the server, and then it sends a message back. And so one way of interfacing with these Lambda functions is you make an API out of it, and it's literally one click. Another way is you can actually set an Alexa skill to fire a specific Lambda function. So AWS like connects to a lot of their features to Lambda. So you could have like an EC2 that talks directly to Lambda, I believe. You can have an Alexa skill that talks directly to Lambda, all that kind of stuff. And once you have this interface set, whether it be Alexa, whether it be an API in that JSON, you can actually communicate it through your Android app or your iOS app or your Unity game like we did. It's really super simple. It just makes how can I use my device, whatever my device is, whether a lot of people use Lambda for Internet of Things. So they have like a little Arduino, they press a button and something happens. So this API gateway that I was talking about, like I mentioned, there's a lot of information, so don't worry, we're about to get to the fun stuff, which is the Twitter stuff. But like I mentioned, this API gateway, just know this in your head when you hear these crazy AWS terms. It's just another way to interface a web service. So it turns your little Lambda function and it gives you a way to access it. So some kind of, some kind of API call, and we'll get into that in a second as well. So what about the tweets? Well, this is where we go back real quick and we'll actually go to actually get started. So I guess, the last little slide is appropriate. The GIF didn't pop up. It's like a little kitty, like thumbs up. All right, anyways. So that's all the slides. The rest is like real stuff, so that's cool. What else is people posting? Nice, nice, nice. Yep, that's exactly what I was talking about. All right, so Twitter. So if you want, I posted this in here as well with the AWS workshop, if you kind of follow that. But step number one is we want some kind of way to talk to Twitter. So Twitter actually, you don't really need AWS for this because they have their own service, which is probably running on AWS, who knows? But we essentially need some kind of way to interface this. We want some kind of way to get a tweet. We can stream tweets. We can get tweets by hashtag. We can get tweets by location. There's all this really cool stuff, and that's all by the Twitter docs. So if you go to developer.twitter.com, I'll talk in the middle of this so you guys can type that real quick, or just watch along, whatever. They have all this really nice documentation. It looks nice now. Honestly, it used to be a lot more readable in the past, like these big fonts and stuff. I don't know. It's kind of hard to navigate now, but it looks nice, right? So they have all these little things. We're going to talk about two things today. We're going to talk about searching tweets, and we're going to talk about filtering real-time tweets. Filtering real-time tweets is what we're doing right now on Slack. Basically, as you type, essentially what's happening is, yeah, exactly. Yep. So, right now we're getting this continuous stream of tweets and we're filtered by this hashtag. And as soon as we get this tweet, we post it to Slack, and we're using that whole AWS service for that. But like I said, we're going to do that Jaden Smith one too, so that's going to be cool. All right, so let's look at, some things they have to offer. So let's look at search tweets first. So like I mentioned, you can honestly go browse this for hours. We're gonna do the standard one. Essentially, if you look here to the left, wow, this is not great. API reference, there we go. So there's things you can do here we go, data endpoint. Yes, this is what we want. So you can do things like say, how many tweets do you want? Basically, you message Twitter and you're like, hey, in this JSON language that I was talking about, give me 100 tweets and give me the tweets for this particular user. And it'll do that, and we'll talk about how to do that. There's all these little things to the side here, little endpoints you can use or little queries you can use. So the Q tag here just means give me some kind of query or filter out what tweet I'm looking for. This locale thing means okay, whether I want English or Spanish or Chinese, whatever it is, you can get a locale for that. There's that count thing I was talking about. You can set, when you want it to start. So let's say I only want relevant tweets. I don't want really old tweets. They even give you some examples. So here's the tricky thing though. And to be honest, I've never done a whole lot of, before making this little workshop, I never done a whole lot of, Twitter stuff before. In the past, they actually had a thing where you could just go query the API. That's it. There's nothing more to it. You didn't have to do any authentication, anything like that. Now it's really complicated. So we're going to use this cool little library. And once again, I'll paste this guy in here as well. So this is a little library that basically, it's going to do all this hard stuff for us. It's going to authenticate for us. It's going to query tweets in a nice abstracted way. So basically, it's this kind of wrapper around that API that I just showed you, where you would have to hit in a RESTful web service way. And all you literally have to do is call something like this, where you have this code here. Let me change it to where you guys can see that a little better. What's a good, let's see, what's a good theme, I guess? Color theme. Oh, here we go. That. All right, cool. And then let's make this font huge. All right, there we go. I'm sure you guys can read it. If not, I'm sorry. All right, sweet. So we use this, we use this code. Instead of making these HTTP calls like I just mentioned with that server, this is gonna be super, super simple. Like I mentioned, it's a quick little workshop, so can't get too in depth. There's a lot of things you can follow after this. You can go look at the code and see like how are they making those requests. You can actually follow along to the actual Twitter documentation and figure out how to make an HTTP request yourself. All that kind of cool stuff. But that's kind of out of scope for here. This is just super quick introduction. So they have all these little functions, and they do the two things that I mentioned. They can stream, and they can get a list of tweets. So let's start off by getting this list of tweets. So if you guys don't know Node.js, that's fine. If you don't know JavaScript, that's fine. We've done a couple workshops in the past talking about the two, but it's relatively simple. Like I mentioned, typically you just want to go and clone that little library that I set. Like I mentioned, the code is all there. But we're just going to make a little playground real quick. We're just going to, let's see, let me make a new tab here. We're just going to query like some kind of tweet, see what we get as a response. We're going to play with this a little bit until we get the result that we want, which is going to be a random tweet by Jaden Smith. All right, so what do we want? All right, like I mentioned, all the code's there. Don't worry about it. But let's just say we're going to call this random tweet.js. One thing is, so if you're new to Node.js, they have these things called dependencies, which essentially, it's in this cool thing called package.json. We already have twit here, but essentially what you would want to do is if you're making a new library just from scratch, you're going to want to run these particular commands. Like I mentioned, I'm going to assume you already have npm installed and Node's installed. You're going to run this cool little command called npm init, and then you're going to run npm install --save twit. And that's essentially going to get you exactly where I am today. Or you can just do it straight from the library. Who cares, right? So we have this little file here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to print a little message just to make sure it's working anyways. I have my terminal up here. I'll make this a lot bigger too. What folder am I in? Let's just, oh, I can't drag that. That's fine. This is fine. Right, print working directory. All right, cool. I'm in the wrong one, so let me navigate there real quick. And I'm in lambda random tweet. Sweet. And I can just run this little function called node random tweet, and it says hi. We get this little hi message here. That's cool stuff. But let's get to the fun stuff. We want to query Twitter. So first things first is we're going to go read the documentation. And by read, I completely mean skim over. So let's look at what they got here. So like I mentioned, there's this npm install. Just you want to run that, and their usage, right? So to break this down a little bit for those of you who are new to JavaScript, we have this little we're requiring in the dependency here. It's almost like if you're importing in Java. What we're doing here is we're setting up this Twitter object, and basically, like I mentioned, we need to somehow tell Twitter who we are, and that's going to be through authentication, which I'll talk about in a second. And then we have access to all these cool functions. So, let's do exactly what the doc says. Let's copy this little guy here. We're going to paste this guy here. And let's see, we're just going to copy it just like this. It's searching for banana, and it's literally going to give us a tweet about bananas since 2011. So that's cool. We're going to save this. And I'm going to show you this not working. And something went wrong here. Well, number one, as I mentioned, it's that authentication. So this is why sometimes it is a little bit important to read through this a little bit because they explain that. But essentially, we need to create an app within Twitter. So we're going to do that real quick. I have this little link here. It's just apps.twitter.com. I'll post this guy in here as well. Nice, you guys are still going. That's what I like to see. All right, here we go. So we're going to make a new app. I have a bunch of ones here that I made. In the past, I did one kind of like this. Essentially, it was for the city of Mesquite. You could they had this festival that they do every year, and I just did it for fun. You could anybody who tweeted about it show up on their website. That's cool. But we're gonna make a new little Twitter app. We're gonna say my test Twitter app, And the thing about Twitter is this is like a username almost. So this name is probably taken. So I'm just going to do that. Description, fetch Twitter, website. I'm just going to google.com. And I agree. Oh, looks like we can't have slashes. Not a valid URL. Okay. I did localhost once and they didn't like that. All right, cool. Made my new Twitter. So I don't care if you copy these keys because I'm just going to delete it anyways. So essentially, we have our app here. So basically what happened is Twitter now knows if you've ever off with Twitter before, like sign in with Twitter or link your Twitter account, that's basically what we just did. So they have their own little app inside of Twitter, just like you can have like Facebook apps, stuff like that. And we made our own little Twitter app. All right, so let's not try and get banned from using that, but essentially, we have all this stuff here, and we need some kind of way of getting like a little access token for us. We're going to go up here to keys and access tokens, and now we have all this little stuff, but the problem is we haven't generated it yet. So like I mentioned, all you do is just keys and access token. You scroll down and you create a new token set. Super, super simple. And page does not exist. What is, okay, let's just regenerate the keys. Oh, we don't need to do that. Maybe it's getting mad at my Google thing. Let's see. Oh, no, we have it. Okay, cool. It generated, but it gave us an error. I don't know what that is. But so if we look back at our code here, we can see we need the consumer key, we need consumer secret, access token secret, and then some kind of timeout. It's optional. So what is the difference between the two? I want to cover that real quick. So essentially, your consumer key is what represents you. It's almost like an app ID. Your access token is some kind of way of saying like, okay, I know this is from your app, but this is what basically says like, I'm this person, right? So it's almost like your consumer API is your email and your access token is your password. Cool stuff. But you also have this thing called secret. And this is really secret. You don't want to give this away like I am on this live stream. So essentially, like if you guys have ever like, used, made some kind of API in your app, maybe you're talking to Stripe, you're talking to a web service, and you actually put this key into your app, well, someone could essentially, looking through your app, if they can get the source code, use this key, and they can actually pretend that they're you by the secret key. So you definitely want to hide that stuff. So I'm just going to copy this in here. I'm going to paste it, make sure we got this here, copy this guy, paste it in again. Don't forget our marks here. Now we got, people are still going. I'm getting notifications on my phone. All right, we're almost done. Don't you worry. There will be more copy and pasting to come though. All right, so we have our access tokens here. So let's see if it knows it's us. And it looks like we got some little error because I forgot something. What did I forget? Oh, comma right there. Bam, debugging. All right, so it says bad authentication data. I'm not really sure why, so let's find out. You guys are the best. Pair programming. There we go. We got all this stuff. And this is this JSON thing I was talking about. This is really cool. So essentially, if we look at this, it looks like gibberish to us, but this is an easy way for it to communicate. So if you guys have ever like built websites before, you probably used HTML. If you guys have done Android before, you've probably done XML. It's some way of structuring this. So essentially, okay, let's pretend you want to tell something. And let's say you just do plain text. You literally just say, here's all the stuff separated by comma. That's just not great. And essentially, that's why JSON, XML, all that stuff exists. So we can look through this here. We can kind of see what's going on. But if we scroll all the way up to the top, we're not going to actually be able to reach the top because the count is 100. So let's make this easier on ourselves, and let's just do like 2. And there we go. So essentially what's happening here is I have an array of statuses. I have what's happening here. And I'll kind of show you. So there's all this stuff here. We have also a user. So I can say, okay, in this array, I essentially want to just give out a list of just tweets. Like all I care about is just a list of tweets. So what I would do here is I would look at the statuses. Is it status or statuses? Okay. All right, let's just grab the first one for now. So this is going to be in the first. And then we're going to just grab the text. That's all we're going to do. We're going to get a random thing about bananas. That's it. There you go. What is that? I can't read that. It's the same thing. No one's tweeted about bananas yet. So the next time someone tweets about bananas, what's up?
Grab the second one.
The second one?
Yeah, get the second one.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'll tell you how to fix this stuff in a second. Oh, we got a new thing about banana. None of them are in English. All right. So, but here's the thing. We want a random quote about bananas. Actually, to make that better, we want the random quote from Jaden Smith. So let's go ahead. Before we make the random thing, let's go ahead and get some of Jaden's glorious tweets. So, like I mentioned, just to save on time a little bit, I actually already have the code for this. So if you look into index.js, you will actually see this whole little thing that I'm talking about. So essentially what they're doing, we changed this around a little bit. We said, okay, this Twitter library I just used, we're gonna look at statuses, we're gonna get the timeline, and we're gonna look for the name official Jaden. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this right here from this guy up to this guy. It did change a little bit. So there's actually a more efficient function call. Instead of just searching for tweets, I could search for like a Jaden Smith hashtag, but now I'm actually looking specifically from his username. So I'm gonna drop this down again back to 5, and let's see his second tweet. Oh, that's an issue. Let's see. Oh, okay. So the problem is that whenever you change this guy up here, the data changes a little bit. So one thing I found that gave me like 5 minutes worth of debugging is that it's no longer statuses, which is weird. It's literally just an array. So let's scroll up to the top. Here we go. It's literally just an array. So no longer are we looking for statuses. All we need to do right here is just call the first one, and bam, will later today. Nice. So we have this is the last tweet that he tweeted. Let's see if he tweeted again. So there's a Slack bot called Yebot that if you type like /Yebot, it like gives you a random Kanye tweet. So that's essentially where I stole this from. So let's get a random one. All right, so if you guys are familiar with how random works, is essentially it gives you a random number between 0 and 1. Well, it turns out if you multiply this and take the floor of it, you can actually get a random between 0 to n. So we're going to copy this guy here. Like I mentioned, all the code's available, so don't worry. Oh, whoops. Fix those indentions. All right, so here's the thing. So the problem is right now, there's no guarantee that there's 100 tweets or however many tweets that I'm doing. So I want to be safe about it and just get the number. So let's say you're like me and you never tweet, but you ask for 100 tweets, but you only get 5. Well, your code's going to break because you're going to get an array out of bounds. So defensive programming right there. And next thing is we actually want to get that particular tweet. So we're going to get the tweet here, just like this. Paste this little guy in here. And so now if we print tweet.text, let's run this guy. And now we are truly getting a random tweet every single time. Pretty cool stuff. You guys are making progress. So what's happening here? Let's break this down real quick while you guys are typing or listening. So essentially, I need to change this back to 100. But what we're doing is we're looking for all the tweets. We're looking for the last 100 tweets from official Jaden. We then take a random number between 0 and 100, or 0 and 99, I guess. And we find that in the index, and we post a random tweet. So here's the thing. We want to essentially, our goal here is now we want to connect this to the internet. We want to connect this to the internet. So now we're going to use AWS. I'm glad you guys are having fun. This is MOBI. Welcome to MOBI. All right. So I hope this empowers you guys to go do this this is fun, right? So it's not just about making like a little, app for your class, or find all the permutations in this binary thing, right? You can actually go outside and make some really cool stuff with all this, knowledge you're learning. So that's always really fun. So, let's get to the AWS stuff. Let's get to the fun stuff. So I went ahead and I logged in, and I want to search for this thing called Lambda. If it's not there, you can just search for it. One thing I'll show you what we're going to do really quickly is we are going to essentially make this guy right here. I'm going to show you exactly what we're doing. Don't you worry. But essentially, let's see, where's my API gateway, that thing that I talked about, and where's my URL? So what I just made was actually converted into a full-fledged API that if you've ever wished you had some kind of RESTful web service to get a random tweet from Jaden Smith, it now exists, and there's about to be however many of you more that exist. So I'll post this guy here too. All right, nice. All right, so that's my API. So let's actually upload this to Lambda now. Let's transition. We talked about Twitter. Let's talk about Lambda, and then I'll give you guys a little few tips to like how to post to Slack. We probably won't have time to do the full app, but I have a lot of guides. I hope you guys are learning a lot. So let's go back to our Lambda, and I want to create a new function. Like I mentioned, it's just like a normal function. It's no, you're not like building this entire an entire server or anything like that. So I'm going to call this my awesome function that gets random tweets. Good names. All right, so what's next? So this thing's called runtime. Like I mentioned, you can do this in any language you want. We're using Node.js, but like I mentioned, if you love Python, you can do Python. If you love Go, you can do Go. If you love C#, yeah. So we're going to choose 6.10. It's at Node 9. They need to catch up. That's okay. So this guy here, basically what the role does is you have certain permissions that you can do on AWS. I'm just going to do a new role from a template. I'm just going to say my role, and I actually don't even have to fill that out. It's not going to do a whole lot. It's just required. I'm going to hit create function. As soon as it loads. All right, sweet. So we created a really long, awesome function name. We have some code here, which you guys probably can't even see. Let's see. Let's see, code editor. Let's see. Whatever. I'm sure you guys can follow along. All right. So we have, they actually built some code in here for us. Oh, nice. They built some code in here for us. And we're just going to run this real quick and see what it does. So we can do test events where essentially you're sending it random bits of data. So we're just going to do the simple hello world they have, and we're going to call this test my function. And so basically what's going to happen is it's going to call my Lambda function with all these keys and values in it. I don't really care. I'm not going to pay attention to them. I'm just going to run that. I'm going to say test. If I hit details, it says hello from Lambda. That's not what we want. This is MOBI. We're going to say hello from MOBI. I spelled it wrong. I spelled it wrong again. Hello from MOBI. All right. Like I mentioned, I'll explain this in just a second. I just want to show you that it is working. Now it says hello from MOBI, so that's cool stuff. So let's talk about what is happening here. So this looks pretty familiar, right? This kind of looks like the JavaScript code that I just mentioned. But the difference is you have this weird little function. It has this thing called event. It has this thing called context. Why is this null? Why is this a string? Well, turns out there's a lot of different options you can do. Well, with AWS Lambda, you can essentially get different types of things. So as I mentioned, you can do like an Alexa skill, you can do an API gateway. So from the context, you can actually figure out where it's coming from. Was this invoked by an API? Then I want to return a certain thing. Was this invoked by a Lambda skill? Then I need to format it to be like an Alexa skill. What parameters were passed in, all this kind of stuff. But all we really care is about this guy here, context.done, which is basically saying, okay, call this, give me a response. Null means there's no error, and the string is what I want to return. So what I'm going to do here is we want to actually update this Lambda function to give me that random tweet that I just talked about. So like I mentioned, I have all the code to do this. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this one just because we have a lot of stuff going on. So I have this guy here. You know what? Just for the sake, just for the sake here, I'm going to actually just copy all of my keys here, and I kind of think you should do the same. So you just copy, you have all your keys here. Essentially the same thing is happening where we're getting this function, but I want to explain what's happening a little bit more. So the thing is with AWS Lambda, so I can get back a pure string, right? That's going to work really well, but whenever I invoke it by some kind of API, I want to give it back in JSON. And so that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going to upload this real quick, and I'll step through it and walk in their little nice code editor. But essentially, a super simple way to do this is instead of typing all this, because I have the packages and whatnot, I'm just going to copy a zip file. Now, this isn't strictly on AWS. This is more of just what you can do as a whole with Twitter and AWS. So I'm not going to go super in depth on how to debug and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to show you that this stuff works pretty well. So let me compress this real quick. I have a random archive. So I'm going to go here, and instead of the code, I'm going to upload from a zip file. If you have a more, I guess, scalable solution, I'll say, where you're actually continuously developing on this, You can create like a little pipeline where essentially whenever you deploy your code, it goes to S3. S3 takes this and puts in Lambda, and then essentially you have a pipeline to deploy whatever you're using. That's what I recommend, but that's not how we're going to do it today. I'm going to save this. Let it do its thing. Now it's going to show me what my code looks like. And so let me test this real quick. I'm just going to hit test. And now I actually have this body that's saying, okay, whatever his tweet is now, streaming World of Warcraft sessions with nice. Okay, so we made this code, but what is different? Why is it doing it in this JSON function now instead of doing it in text? So first things first, let me exit out of this. Let's look at this code a little bit. So we actually made a function. Here, I'll go back to this one since it's more readable. We actually made a custom function just for getting a tweet, and then we made another function just for giving what AWS does. So we made this little tweet here. CB stands for callback. Node.js is asynchronous, and we're doing something asynchronously. We're calling a fetch API, so this is going to happen. It's going to stall up here. It's going to stall a thread, essentially, if you just like wait for it, right? So essentially what's happening is we're doing this exact same thing. We're getting the same tweet, and then we're saying, hey, I'm done. Here's my tweet. And so in this exports.handler, before I said callback.done, and I said hello from MOBI, what I'm doing is I'm getting this random tweet. I get the text of that, and then I say, okay, but instead of saying just this plain tweet, I have this little object here, this JavaScript object. Because it's going to go over a JSON or like a REST API, we need to say that it's a status code 200, which just means okay. If you've seen like 404 or you've gone on Reddit and it's like 500, those status codes mean something. I definitely recommend looking those up. And then for the payload that we're going to say, we have just a tweet and it's going to say the text. So that's what our code does. As we just saw, it worked pretty well. The problem is I have no way of reaching this outside of AWS. So now we're going to get it in this whole API gateway thing that I was talking about. And so there's all these little triggers you can do. There's a cool thing like, okay, let's say I'm running a big like web service and it's dying. I have a bunch of traffic coming in. I'm not able to serve that anymore. I could essentially make a trigger from that to call some AWS Lambda function to message me on my phone. But we're not going to get that complicated today. We're just going to do API gateway. We're going to press this little button here. We're going to create a new API, and we're just going to say random Jaden tweet. The development stage is just, you can make this like production dev. Mine's going to be LOL. And it's going to be open, meaning you don't have to authenticate like we did with Twitter. No access keys, no identity, anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and get this guy started. I'm going to hit this little button here. I got to hit save. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of information. That's okay. It's a lot to cover. But for the most part, it's just a few easy clicks. And then you have this beautiful thing here that now serves you random tweets. And so we literally, within like 10 minutes, just made that little API that I was talking about. So, if you want to do this for an actual productive purpose, maybe, you're, I don't know, watching, okay, if we're going to do this with the whole MOBI thing, right? Let's say we want a random tweet about with the MOBI filter, essentially. We could do the same thing. Sometimes I've seen people do like a fun facts app. So essentially what we could do is query Twitter for a random fun fact, and then we get this through this API, and I connect to it to my phone. But, that's the AWS part here. I know we went really fast, like I mentioned. But, we have something working on AWS. We have a way to interact with it, and we have a really cool Twitter thing. So the last part that I just wanted to briefly mention, I'm probably not going to go like super in depth on it, but I'll more or less explain how I did it. And I have a beautiful article here that kind of explains it in a little more details. There we go. So essentially, if you guys have used Slack before, I'm sure a lot of you guys have. It's a really, really productive tool to like, just like basically the whole thing is instead of sending out emails or calling people, you use Slack. And we actually use this. So I have a little company called Gazova. It's like Uber for a pickup truck. And we actually have a Slack bot every day that tells us how many users were created and how much money we earned. And based off, this is actually really useful too. So every day at 8 a.m., it tells us, how much money we earned that day. And if we earned $0, it searches for a random GIF that's a crying face. And if we earned more than $1, it searches for something that has to do with money. So like, let's see if I can find another one. Yeah, today's, yeah, we didn't make any money today or yesterday, but we had 2 new users and he's crying. So there's a lot of like really cool stuff you can do. Also, we have a Slack bot whenever someone schedules a pickup. Like I mentioned, it's like Uber for furniture delivery, right? You're at IKEA, you need a pickup, it's on demand. The thing is, you know, we're not like Uber or Lyft right now where we have like a fleet of drivers. So we need to know about it, and essentially it sends us a Slack message, and it's using that AWS Lambda thing, which is really cool. So there's a lot of really productive things you can do with all of that. So, you know, if you do have if you are the owner of a Slack page, essentially, there's this huge Slack API that you can kind of go through. And it talks about building particular apps. You know, there's a Giphy app where you can say like / here, I'll do it in chat right now if we have it added. Giphy, hello. And you send it, and that's using a Slack bot, which hits some kind of server, which gives you a random GIF with a tag, hello. So how they did this is essentially, like I mentioned, I'm gonna go super, super brief on this, but in the Slack API, they actually have another library, and I have that on my, we're gonna do the random hashtag one, and I'll show how that worked. So on my terminal here, wherever I have it, basically every time, this isn't on AWS just because I wanted to host it locally and shut it down afterwards, but essentially every time, you know, a message is sent, I'm getting some kind of log about it that you guys have been sending. And this is all running straight through my laptop, which like you're not connecting from UTA to me, you're connecting from UTA to AWS, and that's really cool. So they have this beautiful node library, just like the Twitter one. They have this web client built in, and you actually get this little token just like we did with Twitter. And instead of using Git, we're just streaming for the track Hi MOBI. And as soon as we find that tweet, we're organizing it a little bit. We're saying like the user, whatever the screen name is, said whatever the text is, and then we make a post about it on Slack. So we say, okay, it's super simple. We say, you know, what channel we want. You could do general, random, whatever you have. We said the message is what we just did up here. And okay, so this as user thing, what's really cool is on Slack bots, you can actually like post as a particular user. Like in one Slack channel I'm a part of, we have this like tic-tac-toe bot, and like you post as you, so you have to authenticate with it. But what it says when is user is false is you're posting as a bot. So like a Twitter bot, Facebook bot, whatever, right? Just something that isn't real. You can also give it an emoji, which is :bird : or : there's like the poop emoji or like a smiley face emoji, whatever you want. And then you can give it whatever username you want, essentially. So we post a message to Slack, and we actually get that, you know, we get the message sent, which is that little thing you saw in my console, and it's basically telling me like the ID or whatever. Oh no, I don't even know what TS is, but this is from their example. But essentially, just from like looking at a few docs, I was able to stream this and post it. So there's a lot of like really cool applications for doing this whole Twitter streaming thing. So if you actually go to this website called DevPost, this is my profile, but essentially if you ever go to a hackathon before, you essentially like it's almost like a portfolio for like things that you've done. And so if we can actually like search people's projects, I believe. So let's go to hackathons. Let's see if we can search like Twitter. Eat ramen and cry hackathon. That sounds like every hackathon, but with Red Bull. There's no submissions. All right, let's go to a hackathon that I've been to maybe. Yeah. Oh, whoops. Nice, nice, nice. Go back. All right. So let's go to this hackathon here. I guarantee you there's some kind of Twitter bot here. Drop the mic. All right. Yeah, see, so they do sentiment analysis for like stock stuff, right? I honestly don't know how it works, but probably what they're doing is they're doing some kind of like streaming or something like that. One really cool one I saw, that one was essentially, it did like this, it queried for like words that could be like bullying. So MLH, the people who host a lot of hackathons, they're really big right now onto like cyberbullying prevention. So they do a lot of competitions just on that. So these guys made a Twitter bot that essentially streams just like the Twitter bot here for all your tweets, except it's looking for certain keywords like like, I don't know, whatever, you could call someone. It's probably doing some kind of sentiment analysis, but it's a hackathon, so they probably really aren't. They're just parsing tokens. Yeah, just things like that. So there's a lot more productive things you can do besides just query for hashtags. There's a lot more other things you can do with AWS. Like I said, I just wanted like a brief little introduction. Make sure you go and get your free like education discount. Another one you can do for free is the GitHub Student Developers Pack, and I'll post this in Slack as well. So essentially, it just gives you a bunch of free stuff. The Educate thing gives you $110 in AWS. Unless you leave your server on accident, I guarantee you'll probably never spend that. A bunch of stuff from DigitalOcean. We've used DigitalOcean in the past. Oh, the coolest thing is it gives you free private repos the entire time you're a student, but it only lasts 4 years. So after 4 years, if you're still here, it goes away. You get a free domain name, all this kind of stuff. I've used the Stripe credits. You get $1,000 in revenue. It's not like they don't take the fee from it. All that kind of stuff. Make sure you get your free stuff. Make sure you get your free Spotify or a cheap Spotify and your cheap AWS. Like being a college student's great. So yes, $ emoji. Other than that, like about the whole Amazon thing, this whole Lambda thing, I know it went really, really fast. I'm gonna go ahead and end the live stream here.
Join and I ended it. All right, so if you need, I'm pretty sure this, I really, really hope that it's posted. I'm pretty sure it did. It should be somewhere on here. Let's see. Someone can verify that. I'm pretty sure the live stream's somewhere on our page. Yeah, no. Yeah, there we go. So you can watch the entire thing. It's free. But we do a lot of workshops like this where they're kind of like exclusive. We'll go through like specific, like we did build a Tinder clone in iOS. We did make a Snapchat clone in Android. We did all these little things, and we have this little portal that you can log into. If I remember my password, let's see. It's a little slow sometimes. We're using like the free tier. Anyways, we have all this kind of stuff like listed, the ones that we didn't make public. We have one called Study Buddies, where it's basically like make an app to like track your classes and plan. Okay, we made a little app. All right, so we made a little app that's basically like keep track of your homework and like plan for events, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully I'm at a much better pace now. Lots of stuff to cover, man. All right, thanks for not actually shooting me. But like I mentioned, we have all this stuff online. Did anybody have any questions about AWS in general, like a project you're working on that may be useful, like some helpful tips, or like if you've been working on it in the past and you've gotten really frustrated and given up, like I have several times, like anything like that, any questions? Well, if not, I mean, that's honestly about it. I'll let Mary and Colton come up here and kind of talk about how to join MOBI. We do this kind of stuff like every 2 weeks. So we do this thing called MOBI Learn and MOBI Social Coding. I'll let Colton talk about it.
Yeah, so as Cameron was mentioning, we do this every 2 weeks.
Talk louder.
No. Membership, if you want to join as a member, you'll get access to the dashboard that he was just on. It's $15. You also get a t-shirt. And is anyone wearing it today, actually? No? Okay. Like, they're brand new, they're cottony, they're really soft. They're really soft. They're really soft now, they're not the...
It's a nice t-shirt.
Front side. $15. Our next meeting's in, like I said, 2 weeks. Are we doing more AWS next time? Or
oh yeah, so up to you guys. Like, what do you guys want? Post in that Slack channel, like on it. No, post to Twitter to make it go to the Slack channel. Okay. What do you want to do? Okay, we can essentially turn this into an Alexa skill, where I can bring an Echo Dot up here, and I lose my voice saying "Hey Alexa" 50,000 times. We can do one where. Let's see, I don't know, we can actually make like an actual full-fledged server. We have 2 people here who's like interned and now work for Amazon, so they can do a little workshop. We can completely get rid of Amazon and just do more Twitter stuff. Up to you guys, post whatever you want. We love doing like little workshops like this. We do a lot of mobile stuff, but we like to hit the other topics too. So.
Yes, it's really cool. Yep, that's it. If you want to join, come talk to me or Mary, and we'll get you hooked up. that's it.
Sweet. Thanks for coming out, guys.